In March of 2005, South Africa, the country at the southern tip of a vast continent, has a tumultuous history. The Dutch, among with other European colonists, founded Cape Town, South Africa, an appealing location for colonization because of its location on the spice route. What followed was an all-too-familiar story of colonization, war, white expansion, forced removals, and the oppression of the indigenous population. In fact, apartheid, which is institutionalized racism akin to the Jim Crow laws in the American South before the 1960s, remained in effect until 1994. South Africa's history has led to a significant problem with crime, including burglaries, robberies, and murders. Compared to neighboring countries, South Africa has an extremely high crime rate. In March of 2005, a puzzling murder rocked the lives of a well-to-do family in a large circle of college students. Inge Lotz was the only child of Jan and Juanita Lotz. Her father, Jan, was a professor of radiology at the University of Stellenbosch, and her mother was a physiotherapist until Inge was born, when she stayed home to raise Inge. Inge's family were members of the Dutch Reformed Church, and it was a central part of their lives. She excelled academically at all levels. Outside of school and church, Inge was musically talented. She toured Europe with a children's choir and was an accomplished piano player. Inge's happy childhood continued into her adult life. She loved her parents and returned home from university every weekend. Her father recalls that they ended her weekend visits by attending church and having a cookout before returning to her apartment. Her mother recalls that on the Sunday before her death, she and Inge were packing up her clothing to take to the apartment. Frederick Van Deer, her boyfriend, commented on a sundress with spaghetti straps that she was packing. He told Inge that she could only wear it around him. She and her mother laughed, but he was serious. In his opinion, the dress was too revealing and immodest. The point of her modesty and conservative manner of dress is an important clue in her murder case. Understanding the circumstances of Inge's murder required police to examine the recent events in her life. 2 weeks before the attack, Inge moved into her apartment at the Shiraz apartment complex. She was concerned about her safety and chose this complex with care. It had tall walls and security fencing topped with an electric fence. Before she moved in, she had burglar bars and a security door installed for increased security. Inge was aware of the need for safety. Every day, she would call her mother with a missed call, calling and hanging up as a type of check-in to confirm she was safe. This was a common practice among people in South Africa, to frequently indicate to their friends and family that they were safe without having to send a long text or make a phone call. Inge had bought a new couch for her apartment, but when it was delivered, it was too big to go through the door, so they passed it through the balcony window. While moving the couch, the movers broke a couple of tiles in the balcony, so Inge arranged with the tiling contractor to repair them. On March 15th, the locks on the front doors of all the apartments were changed due to an installation error with the contractors. Only Inge had the key to her apartment. However, she had 3 remotes to open the gate. She put one on her key ring and gave one to her parents. The location of the 3rd remote is unknown. Inge's boyfriend, Frederick Van Deer, had spent the night of March 15th at her apartment because he had an early lecture at the university. The morning of the 16th, while Frederick was preparing to leave for class, Inge and Fred argued. She worried that their relationship was failing and that Fred was upset with her. He had to go, so he asked her to email him what she was upset about so that he could read it after class. She did write him a letter, but on paper instead of by email. Then she texted him to see when his lecture would be over so she could deliver it to him in person. She left her apartment at about 9:40 to meet him and bring him the letter. As he was leaving, the contractors arrived to repair the tile. She asked him to come back later. Inge met Fred after his class and she gave him the letter that she had written. Fred thanked her for the letter and headed off to work. Inge attended a lecture, then had lunch with a longtime friend, Wimpy Boshoff. Wimpy said Inge expressed wildly different feelings about her relationship with Fred. She talked about the hell of a fight they had that morning and expressed her fear that Fred did not love her anymore. By the end of lunch, however, Inge was telling Wimpy that she hoped Fred would propose to her soon. After lunch, Inge arrived at her apartment at 1:30 p.m. just as the tile contractors were trying to climb over the balcony with a ladder to repair the tiles. Instead, she let them in through the door and called her mother while they were working. It only took them about 10 minutes to repair the damage. Her mother and the tile contractor confirmed that Inge locked the security gates on the door to the balcony and the front door when they left. At about 1:30, Inge sent a text to Fred saying, "Had a great time with Wimpy. Tiling done. Miss you already. XX." Inge went out for a cheeseburger, a soda, and a magazine at 2:55. There is CCTV footage of her in the grocery store, the last video footage anyone has of her. After the grocery store, Inge rented a DVD and went back home. Records show that she got the DVD at 3:07 p.m. based on the evidence found in her apartment. Police believe she went directly back to her apartment to eat her burger and relax. No one tried to contact Inge again until 8:11 p.m. when Fred texted her. He called at 9:03 p.m. and left a voicemail. At 9:39, he started writing an email to Inge but stopped and texted instead. With each missed text and call, Fred expressed to those around him that he was growing increasingly worried, feeling something was wrong with Inge because he couldn't get a hold of her. At 10 p.m., Fred texted Juanita that he felt uneasy because Inge was not answering his texts or calls. Less than 20 minutes later, Fred called Juanita again to say he was coming over to get the keys to Inge's apartment and a remote to the gate. This is odd because he knew that the locks had been changed and the keys Juanita had would not work. Fred set out for Juanita's house, and Maria Esbotha, his roommate, stayed at their apartment to coordinate phone calls. He suggested to Fred that they ask a friend, Cristo Pretorius, a pastor at his people's church, to go to Inge's apartment and try to get in to check on her. Cristo lived only a 2-minute drive from the Shiraz apartment complex. Cristo agreed and immediately went to the apartment complex. At approximately 10:25 p.m., he buzzed Inge's number from the gate but got no response. To get in, he waved to a man outside on his balcony and explained the situation. After getting buzzed in, Cristo located Inge's apartment and knocked, but there was no answer. He tried the doorknob and found that the door was unlocked. Upon entering, he saw someone on the couch. When he approached the sofa, he was shocked and overwhelmed to see Inge's body leaning back on the couch, covered in blood. Cristo ran from the apartment and reported her death as a suicide to the police and Maria Esbotha. Maria did not want to share the devastating news of Inge's death with Fred or Juanita over the phone. He decided that driving to Juanita's home was the best option. Phone calls and text messages flew between family and friends concerning Inge. At 10:42, Fred called Maria to ask if he had any news from Cristo. Maria said no because he wanted to tell Fred in person. Only 1 minute later, Fred called Maria again, saying he didn't believe Maria and demanded answers. Maria told him to wait at Juanita's house and he would be there shortly. The exact details of what happened when Maria arrived at the Lutz family home are murky, because Juanita and Maria tell one version of events while Fred recounts another. Juanita went outside to wait for Maria to arrive and found Fred sitting in his car with his eyes closed. Until that moment, she believed that he was on his way to Inge's apartment. As they approached the house, Maria briefly told Fred what had happened. Juanita overheard their conversation and demanded Maria answer her. Fred replied saying Inge was murdered this afternoon. He then told her, "Tomorrow I'll move in and become the child in the house." Later though, both Juanita and Maria confirmed he made these statements. Fred denied ever having said them. Police investigators were already analyzing the scene in Inge's apartment, though they mishandled it. 7 officers walked in, out, and through the apartment, potentially ruining the evidence. Inge had been hit in the head with something like a small hammer, approximately 20 times. Then after she died, the killer stabbed her over 20 times in the neck and carved part of her chest open. When she was killed, Inge was wearing pajama shorts and a thin tank top. Her family believes she would not have been comfortable wearing that outfit around someone she didn't know. This detail, and the fact that the door was unlocked and there were no signs of forced entry, led police to believe that the murderer was someone Inge knew. Police identified several key pieces of evidence in their investigation of Inge's apartment. Police collected the case for the DVD that Inge had rented earlier. They fingerprinted it and found unidentifiable fingerprints because it was a public DVD rental case. They did find one identifiable fingerprint, which they would say at the trial belonged to Fred. However, they returned the DVD case to the store so they could not analyze it further. In the bathroom, investigators found a bloody towel and some bloody marks on the floor, indicating that the killer cleaned up before leaving the apartment. Long hairs matching Inge's led police to believe the killer cleaned off the weapon. Police thought the marks on the floor were shoe prints. They searched Fred's shoes and said the tracks on the bathroom floor did match a pair of Fred's shoes. Police also noted that this was not a burglary. Nothing was taken from Inge's apartment except the remote for the gate to the apartment complex. Anytime a murder occurs, police first look at close relationships, such as boyfriends and family members for suspects. Fred was high on the suspect list. He is a problematic suspect, however, with some people believing that police had tunnel vision, and others sure that they didn't look closely enough at Fred and his story. The police investigated other potential suspects. Werner Corollas, a 17-year-old criminal and meth addict, confessed to the murder. He could not verify accurate details of the crime, so police dismissed his confession. Police also briefly looked at Marius Botha as a suspect, though investigators excluded him early in the investigation. They also considered the tile contractors. However, they were illegal workers from Mozambique and had already left the country by the time police were looking for them. The final suspect was Ian Myberg, Inge's uncle. Myberg's ex-wife called in and accused him. However, cell phone records showed that he was 900 miles away in Pretoria when Inge was killed. Fred remained the prime suspect in the case and was arrested and tried for her murder. The trial was a 9-month-long ordeal with some evidence verging on the absurd. The fingerprints on the DVD case were challenged. Fred's attorneys hired a specialist who claimed it had been lifted from a curved surface, such as a drinking glass, instead of a flat surface. It would be perfectly normal for Fred's fingerprints to be on a glass because he was frequently in Inge's apartment. Prosecutors brought up questions about Fred's location throughout the day. The CCTV at Old Mutual shows him coming in at 11 a.m. and leaving at about 6 p.m. Throughout the day at work, bits of electronic evidence like phone calls, emails, and text messages indicated that he was at work. However, no evidence suggests his location for more than an hour and a half between 3:29 and 5:14 p.m. Some believe that he could have taken the time to leave work, kill Inge, clean up, and return to work in that time, though due to driving time, that would give him only 15 minutes to kill her and clean up. It is unlikely, but not impossible. When police searched Fred's truck, they found a small hammer under the seat. He didn't remember leaving it there, and there were no traces of DNA on it. It was also much smaller than the object used to bludgeon Inge. According to the South African police investigators, the bloody spots on the bathroom floor were shoe prints that matched the shoes Fred owned. They also claimed that Bill Boziak, an American ex-FBI agent, had confirmed this opinion. Boziak had not. In fact, he was so angered by being misrepresented in this way that he became an expert witness for the defense, testifying that there were no shoe prints but transfer marks from something with blood on it being set on the bathroom floor. Salacious rumors flew during the trial. The defense claimed that Inge had an abortion because she had a shopping list that said D&C on it. Most likely, this was a reminder to get a gift for the wedding of Fred's brother, Dewey, and his wife, Carla, especially since the next item on the list was silver shoes. Another rumor was that Inge was the child of incest between Juanita and her brother Ian Myberg. In 2007, after a grueling trial, which was mostly damaging to all parties involved, Frederick van der Veer was acquitted of the murder of Inge Lotz. In a statement about his ruling, Judge Dion van Zyl explained he had never seen such a poorly managed crime scene and handling of evidence. Years later, the judge expressed his opinion that the prosecution was too focused on Frederick and not all the evidence. In short, the prosecution was not prepared to argue against the defense. The case continues to bring up questions. Private investigators and people involved in the case have continued to analyze the evidence to determine who is guilty of Inge's murder. The conclusions they reach are as varied as the researchers who produced them. The stress of the continued attention and loss of Inge has taken its toll on her parents. Though they still want answers, they have stepped out of the public eye for the sake of Jan's health. He explains, "I'm a bit of a loner. I've become extremely isolated. Jan and Juanita feel it is just impossible to go on the way they have up to now. We need closure." Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below.